Everybody, thank you for being here tonight. And this is the meeting of the Common Ground community of White Lake. My name is Norm Kittleson. I'm your moderator for the evening. Among other things, I am a board member of the White Lake Community Library. And it's my pleasure to be here tonight to moderate this discussion. Just to let you know who we are and what we're all about. This is Connecting Across Differences. It was founded by local residents in 2004. Common Ground Community of White Lake is a nonpartisan group committed to bringing people together across political, cultural, and personal divides. By the way, can everybody hear me okay? All right. We believe that dialogue, education, and mutual support can help us build a stronger, more connected community. To foster an inclusive and understanding community through thoughtful conversation, education, and support, we are dedicated to rebuilding trust across differences, encouraging open and respectful dialogue, supporting individuals in sharing their lived experiences, and promoting healing, resilience, and constructive engagement. As we navigate a changing world, our goal is to create safe spaces for thoughtful exchange where listening is as important as speaking and empathy leads to stronger communities. Community conversations, what we do are facilitate community conversations on timely and challenging topics. We offer educational events with guest speakers and local voices, workshops and gatherings focused on communication and understanding, and support and resource sharing to help people feel heard, valued, and connected. Tonight we have a set of speakers. Professor Nicholas Budimir, who is a sociology professor at Muskegon Community College and is an advocate for labor rights. We have John Horn, former president of, what was the alphabet soup you gave me, John?
MCTEA, Muskegon City Teachers Education Association.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Chris Vanderstelt, who is an executive at H-Well Services. The format will be, each speaker will speak for roughly 20 minutes, followed by a 10-minute question and answer session. If time allows, we'll have additional follow-up questions before we wrap up. We have to conclude by 6:45 to allow time to get out of the library by 7 o'clock when they close. We want to make sure that we're not keeping anybody here later than they need to be. Common Ground is a nonpartisan group, and we kindly ask that attendees refrain from promoting political agendas during our event. Our focus is on listening, learning, and respectful conversation. And we're planning more educational events in the fall. If you have suggestions, we'd love to hear them. Also, there's a backpack giveaway on August 30th.
13th.
13th, sorry. We'll be at the backpack giveaway. We'll be at the backpack giveaway with information about our group and a duck pond with candy and prizes for the kids. So stop by and say hello. There's information about that. Were there some flyers flying around?
There's one. You have it right up there.
Oh, there's one.
Yeah.
Okay. Then I will make sure to put this in a place where people can see it, so I'll hand that off to you. All right, and I'll share the contact information now and again at the end of the presentation, but if you want to contact by email, it's commongroundwhitelake@gmail.com. So commongroundwhitelake@gmail.com. Again, I will share that again at the end of the meeting. Does anybody have any questions or concerns before we get started? Everybody doing okay? Anybody need anything? The accommodations? Everybody's okay? All right. Well, then what I would like to do is, who is the first speaker? Do we have a?
John.
John is the first speaker? Okay. So I will walk over and hand the microphone to John Horn, and he will.
I don't know that I need the microphone, honestly. But
Well, if you want to, that's okay. But if anybody's having trouble hearing,
does help with the recording? Okay, I'll just use my teacher voice if it's all.
there you go.
guys.
Yeah, I'm a former teacher. I can do it. Yeah. All right. I'll put it here in case you want it. Okay.
All right, safety net.
All right.
Thanks.
There you go.
Okay, so yeah, my name is John Horn. I am the former president and the future president. Louder? Oh, you want me to go in front of the camera? Yeah, all right.
let me one more thing. I'm sorry. We have cards over here. If you have questions, we're asking you to fill out some cards, and if I guess we'll color code them. So yellow will be questions for John, green will be questions for Nicholas, and the pink will be questions for Chris. Chris, thank you. And if you have any general questions, we have blue cards here, but feel free to use those, and we will collect them as the evening goes along, and then read them at the, when you're done with your presentation, and answer people's questions afterwards. So, sorry I didn't mention that earlier. Sorry, go ahead.
Thanks. So if it appears that I'm flirting with the camera when we're married, it's okay. Okay, so my name is John Horn, and like I said, I am the former and future president of the MCTEA, that is the Muskegon City Teachers Education Association. That is the Muskegon Public Schools Teacher Union. The reason that I'm not the current president, but I am both former and future, is because of our union's bylaws. The bylaws are like the constitution of a union. It's the rules for how the union conducts itself. And just like the US Constitution, they have idiosyncrasies. And one of the odd things about our particular set of bylaws is that when you are elected as president of our union, you actually serve as president-elect for 2 years, sort of like a vice president role. And then after 2 years, the current president's term is up, they step down, and then you become the president for 2 years. So I just got reelected, but I don't actually get the power back again until 2 years from now. So I was asked to come in tonight to give you guys sort of general information about what unions are for and what it's like to serve as the officer of a union. So collective bargaining is essentially the core of what a labor union is for. It's so that the members of the organization can bargain together, and so that they can sort of have a rising tide that lifts all boats type of situation. Is it possible that an individual could negotiate a better situation for themselves than the general population? Sure. But generally speaking, when you're working together in a group, you can get better working conditions, pay, benefits, et cetera, than if you were bargaining individually, because there's power in numbers, right? So the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement, that is the core of what we do. First, we negotiate the CBA, and then we enforce the CBA by the various means that are outlined in that CBA and under Michigan and federal law. If there's ever a violation of the CBA, or what most people usually refer to as the contract, it gets a little bit hairy there because generally speaking, you have an individual contract with your employer. And so when you talk about your contract versus the contract, it gets confusing. So that's why I'll refer to it as the CBA. Oh, by the way, I know there's a format here for 20 minutes of lecture and then 10 minutes of questions, but I'm a public school teacher. I am definitely used to being interrupted. So if anybody has like a burning question that they want to throw out there, just pop your hand up and feel free to interrupt me at any time. So we negotiate, we sit down as a team. We have a negotiations team. At our particular local unit, that is an appointed position. The president chooses their team. And then from among that team that is then ratified by our board of directors, the president then names someone to be the chief negotiator, and they sort of like are the spokesperson at the table when we're doing contract negotiations. Currently, my union is under a 5-year contract. We're going this school year, starting in the fall, will be the 5th year of our 5-year contract. That's unusual for our bargaining unit. Typically, there are only 1 or 2 years, but we were able to negotiate a 5-year contract 4 years ago, so that was kind of nice to not have to go back to the table every single year. We'll see if we can do that again, no promises. So yeah, their team sits down on one side of the table, we sit down on the other, and we propose things back and forth, and try to work out a bargaining agreement that is beneficial to all parties. Things that you can bargain in Michigan, particularly speaking from the perspective of a public employee, which has additional restrictions on it as opposed to a private employee. But because I work for the government, there's laws that govern what we can and can't collectively bargain. Pay, obviously, benefits like insurance, working conditions like your report times, start of the day, end of the day, passing time, lunch, when lunches can be, how long they can be, how many students you can have in front of you. There's all kinds of things that we can negotiate. In fact, those different bargaining topics expanded 2 years ago because the right to work legislation that was passed during the Snyder administration had taken away a lot of different topics that were allowed to be bargained under Michigan law, and now a lot of those have been restored. Next week, I'm sitting down at the negotiations table with our superintendent to talk about teacher discipline, which is now a required bargaining item. Actually, we have to hash it out. We don't have an option. So there's things that you mandatory items that you have to bargain. Then there's optional ones that you can or not as you see fit. So yeah, we will nail down, if a teacher gets themselves into trouble, what are the rules for how that is investigated, what kinds of discipline can they receive, just all the details with that. So it should be interesting to work out, because for a long time, it's just been sort of whatever the administration feels. So it's going to change things quite dramatically. Any questions so far? Yes?
So you said you, your VP basically for 2 years. Is that your training period, or do you have other training that you guys go through?
So as a local bargaining unit, we are also members of the Michigan Education Association, the MEA, and we're also members of the National Education Association, the NEA. And they do offer trainings. Generally, they're free to members. So I did receive some training. My situation was interesting, how I came in to be a union officer. I actually didn't serve as president-elect during my first term because our president received the office and then resigned 1 minute later. And so our bylaws say that the president-elect becomes the president. So I just kind of thrown into the deep end without my Popeye arms. So yeah, but it worked out. It was fine. She got an administration position a month later, so there's a whole backstory there. But yes, we can receive training. Ideally, when you're president-elect, you would be going to conferences. We have a local office, an MEA office in Norton Shores, just outside the airport, and so they'll offer trainings there as well. Yeah.
2 questions.
Yeah.
There's a fairly complex history about the scope of bargaining when the R's were in power and took away and made mandatory certain contract provisions throughout the state.
Right.
You can't bargain it. We already wrote it for you and jammed it down the management and the union's throats all over the state. And then the second question, with your 5-year idea, how do you handle in inflationary times? How do you handle the question of annual increases when you lock them in 5 years in a whack?
So your first question, you're asking what are those mandatory topics? Or
well, a little of that history. In other words, a whole bunch got taken away.
yes,
Pulled off.
yeah,
the
that was during the
table.
Snyder administration.
Right, and
Yep.
then they've been put back on. Maybe not all of them.
Not all of them, but the vast majority have been. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So it's mostly been restored. So that was something that the Democrats pushed for when they came back into office, when they swept the state offices, the legislature and the governorship. And that's also a part of what unions do, is advocacy like that. So some of my union dues that I pay every month go towards the MEA's advocacy and lobbying in Lansing and in Washington, D.C. So second question was the 5-year contract and how that deals with inflation. The answer is it doesn't. You just hope that it's about where it should be. Now, in our current contract, we were able to get a 20% pay increase over 5 years. So it's spread over, it's like 3%, 4%, 4%, 5%, 5%. Something like that. Don't quote me on the actual numbers. But it was spread over 5 years. But that's in addition to your pay scale step, which you get every year for 1 more year of experience.
Seniority.
Yeah. So they're true pay increases, not just cost of living, step bumps. So yeah, it was a pretty good deal for us. And the superintendent got a lot of what he wanted to. He wanted to kind of restructure how our school was. So, you know, it's a negotiation. It's a give and take, compromise, if you will. The soul of democracy, one might say. Yeah, question.
Okay, so explain to me about public sector versus private.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
I think some people don't realize that that's changed a little bit.
Yeah, so public sector is you work for the public, you work for the people, you are a government employee, whereas private sector is basically everything else, right? Anything that is owned by a family or a corporation or a private business. So yeah, I'm a public sector employee, so I work for a local government, school district. So
But you don't have to pay union dues, you don't have, whereas a
No.
private, you have to if it's.
okay, so you're
Yes.
asking about the Janus decision.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So 2018, there was a Supreme Court case, a guy named Mark, let's say Mark Janus, in Illinois, my home state. I think he was a child advocate or a social worker of some type, I believe. And he sued his union essentially because they were what was called a closed shop. Everybody who worked for that institution was a part of the union and had to pay dues. And he didn't like paying dues and he didn't want to be part of the bargaining unit, and so he sued basically to emancipate himself from it. And it went all the way to the United States Supreme Court, and they ruled that money is a form of speech. In particular, union dues are a form of political speech, and therefore a public sector employee cannot be compelled to pay union dues because that is a violation of their First Amendment freedom of speech. It's a controversial decision, especially in the labor movement. It hurt public sector labor unions pretty badly. So now we have to fight to convince all of our people that are under our bargaining unit, which is all the teachers, all the counselors, librarians, media specialists, coaches, that they should join the union and pay dues. We have to represent them regardless. They are covered by our collective bargaining agreement, our contract. If they request a representative, we have to represent them in the proceedings, but they don't have to pay dues. And so we basically have to beg people to pay dues and contribute and not be a freeloader. And it's challenging. Most schools in Michigan right now, most local units, if they can get to 70-75% due-paying members, that's considered decent. Obviously, the more is better. 90% is considered really good. If you fall below 50% and your employer is aware of it, then they can challenge your union's right to exist and basically dismantle it because you no longer represent the majority of your people. So, yeah.
That's in both public and private, or just public?
I think that's both. Yeah.
In either case, a secret ballot is prescribed by federal and by state law, so people's actual vote, how they cast it, will be private.
Yeah, right.
But the union membership could end up saying, nope, we won't be a union anymore.
Yeah, which I think most people in this room would probably understand that's a disaster for that particular, yeah.
So that would be just for that local entity, right?
Yes, it could also apply to larger entities though, like say if MEAs, membership
Oh,
drop
yeah,
below
I'm
50%,
just saying
they
if
could all.
in some school district,
Mhm.
their membership falls below 50%, that wouldn't apply to the entire union throughout the state.
No, just their local unit. And they could always reestablish it later if they wanted to.
Yeah,
have
that's
a
what I
vote
make
again.
sure it's not like
Yep.
somebody's gonna go target a single district to destroy the union.
Yeah, they could. And
Well, I mean, to destroy the whole.
destroy the whole thing. It would be unlikely to succeed, but for sure. Yep. Let's see, I got about 10 minutes more. So I guess I could talk about bylaws a little bit and union organization. So labor unions are democracies. The details of how they run themselves, there is some state and federal regulation to that, but a lot of it is at the discretion of the bylaws. So like I said earlier, the bylaws are kind of like the constitution for your bargaining unit. Generally, officers are elected by popular vote, secret ballot. So for my particular bargaining unit, that would be president-elect, that would be treasurer, that would be secretary, and individual building reps. So every building has a couple of representatives that help people in that building. That's based on the population of the building, but usually it's between 1 and 3. So those are all elected positions. Committee assignments generally are by appointment, typically at the discretion of the president, but they usually have to be ratified by the board of directors, which is all of the officers plus the representatives, and then the chair people of any permanent committees also get a vote. And so that's just Robert's rules, majority rule. So let's see, what else can I tell you? It's interesting being a labor leader. To dispel one of the misconceptions that people have about labor unions, there's something I tell my members when they ask me if they can or can't do something. It is my job to defend your rights. It is not my job to defend your wrongs. A labor union's primary responsibility is to negotiate and then defend the bargaining agreement, okay, the collective bargaining agreement. It's not to try to get bad employees protected. It's not to try to get people out of trouble. If one of my members does get into, if they're being investigated for some type of misconduct or unprofessional behavior, my job is to ensure that they get due process. Okay, and the administration follows all of the contract language, all the collective bargaining agreement language that stipulates how that investigation is to be handled, who they can question. I would strongly advise that they always have a union representative present at any meeting that could lead to discipline. You're really shooting yourself in the foot if you don't. And just make sure that the administration follows the rules. And if they don't follow the rules, then we raise a ruckus. And that happens more often than you might think. But if a teacher grabs a kid and shakes them and stuff, it's nothing I can do for that person, right? I mean, I can make sure they get due process, but I'm not going to try to save their job. I'm not going to try to get their punishment thrown out. If you did wrong and the administration sees fit to punish you for it, they can do it, and I'm not going to stand in their way, especially if you are guilty. So, yes.
In a public union, if the administration doesn't follow the agreed, status, whatever, what, other than a strike, and I'm not sure if you can do that, what are the ramifications?
It's complicated. So there's a grievance process.
Okay.
And that is outlined in the bargaining agreement. Basically, we file paperwork saying that such and such administrator violated the contract. This is the contract language they violated. This is the background. This is the person who is alleging that the contract was violated, and this is the redress that we're seeking. And then I generally advise people to go talk to their supervisor first to see if they can figure out whatever the problem is and have it resolved without taking a formal direction. But if they don't get satisfaction, then the grievance process gets everybody who needs to be at the table to discuss the matter, and it does so on a timetable. That's the key, right? Because if there is an ongoing contract violation happening, it's in the interest of the administration to just keep kicking that can down the road endlessly. Yeah, we'll take care of that. Don't worry. We're on it. We're looking at it. But the grievance process gives them a timetable. Generally, it's 5 days. And if they don't handle it by then it goes to the next level, becomes an HR matter, then it becomes a superintendent matter. That's where it lands on my plate.
Is there any point when they can just go, well, we don't care, the administration?
They can.
And
In
what
that
is
case,
the process?
The culmination of the grievance process, if they're just being intransigent, then it ends up in arbitration, essentially. We would contact the MEA at that point and get an MEA lawyer on the case. We would say, hey, they are not meeting with us. They are not following the contract. We've tried this, and this. Here's the whole record. And then MEA will set us up with a time and an arbitrator and they will decide. It's risky because an arbitrator could side any direction they want, but we have taken things to arbitration before it does happen. Yep. So, yeah, go ahead.
Is arbitration part of the contract agreements? You can't go to court?
It is, yes. Yeah. Generally speaking, that's what the legal team of any district is going to basically demand, is arbitration as opposed to court. Suppose you could bargain it the other way, but yeah, arbitration is standard. So you mentioned something else during that question that tickled something in my brain, and I've forgotten what it was.
I wish I could help you out.
That's all right. Anyway. Dang, what was that? I lost it. Oh well. Any other questions?
One other distinction under Michigan law is that in areas of public safety, so police department,
Oh, I
fire
know what it
department,
was.
ambulance, those may not go on strike
Yeah.
because
Thank
they're
you, Bruce. That's what I
essential
was
to
thinking of.
day-to-day public safety. But they receive in law a different right, which is called compulsory arbitration,
Mhm.
whereas for John and other non-public safety unions in the public sector, arbitration is a voluntary negotiated process
Right.
between the individual union and the employer. Compulsory, voluntary, two different types of arbitration,
Right.
depending on the status of the employees.
But that does also remind me what you had brought up earlier, which is striking. And is striking illegal for public sector employees in Michigan? And the answer is yes, but. So there are penalties associated with any kind of a work stoppage in Michigan. And this includes sick-ins or anything else that, you know, is like a collective or even an individual deliberate work stoppage. Basically, if they can prove that you deliberately stopped work, either as an individual or as a union, they can penalize your pay. They can take away your pay for the day. And depending on how egregious it is, they can, you know, issue court orders to send you back to work and stuff like that. But that doesn't stop some people from doing it anyway. Flint Public Schools actually went on strike last year. They did an orchestrated sick-in event where over 100 employees all called in sick on the same day, and the school district just had to shut down for the day. There's nothing they could do. They didn't have the staff. And I'm sure there were investigations. I'm sure, because it's all stipulated in state law about what has to happen. It has to go, you know, the state does an investigation. The superintendent of that district has to, you know, identify the people that they believe, you know, did the violation and so forth. But, I mean, it's just another kind of leverage. It's riskier in Michigan than in other places, but that doesn't mean you can't do it. Yeah.
Have you noticed a rise again in unions since things?
Yeah, I would say union power, I'm cautiously optimistic. I mean, unions are certainly more in the driver's seat than they have been, you know, like say during the Reagan Revolution, when they really had the knees cut off from underneath them. We're seeing a slow but steady restoration of bargaining rights. But they're certainly still not as powerful as they were, say, in the 60s and 70s. They nowhere close. Nicholas can probably give more details on that, but yeah. Yeah.
When you mentioned there's the technically being illegal to go on strike, does the reverse apply to the administration? Can they not lock out? You know, whole groups of people?
I would assume so. Yeah, like a lockout. I would assume that's illegal too. I don't know the law on that part, because that would be a wild thing for an administration to do.
Right.
But, yeah.
I mean, but, you know, I'm just trying to,
Yeah.
agreement should be equitable.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Should have, you know.
Yeah, I would say it's probably almost never in their interest to do something like that. I mean, the community would just eviscerate them for that, right? You would hope. But yeah, I would assume that's illegal too, but don't quote me on that. Okay. Okay, I got about 5 more minutes. minutes-ish, is that right?
Yeah,
3
okay.
minutes.
Yep.
3 minutes, look at that.
Well, so I have a couple of
Yeah.
comments. So, regarding the right to work law in Michigan, I like to call it fewer rights and less work. It's
Yeah.
and also, in terms of the Janus decision, and I was a building rep for a while when
Okay.
I was teaching. And so
Good for you.
I represented teachers when they've been under the gun, and also had to file a grievance against an administrator who was particularly abusive. So it works both ways.
Yep.
But yeah, as far as the Janus agreement goes, the analogy I like to use is, well, I'd like to be a member of the Chamber of Commerce and get all the benefits that being a member of the Chamber of Commerce has, but I don't feel like paying for my membership.
Yeah, yeah.
Right?
Right,
It's
yeah.
just, it makes no sense.
Yeah, it's crazy that they gave all the benefits in the costs, right?
Yeah, so,
Yep.
just my 2 cents worth.
Yeah, well, thanks, I appreciate it, I agree with it.
Yeah.
Union dues, that's gonna vary wildly from unit to unit. At Muskegon, we pay $97 a month, and that's 10 months out of the year. We don't pay dues in July or August because we don't work. Yeah.
Yeah, the one part about that Janus decision that I don't understand is why, if they don't want to be a member of a union, that they're still required, the union's still required to support them as if they are.
It's because of another precedent, the Weingartner rights. You have the right to a representative at any official proceeding, and so it's sort of like 2 different decisions playing off each other. Yep.
Right to work is being brought up by the legislature again today
Cool, good luck.
in Michigan.
Yeah, I'm sure it is, yeah. Okay.
That'll die a nice slow death.
Yeah, right, yeah, it's, maybe it'll get out of committee.
Maybe.
Yeah. But if it goes to the governor's desk, she's not gonna sign that. Any other questions or comments in my remaining 27 seconds?
If a situation goes to arbitration, who are these arbitrators? Where do they come from?
So I don't know, I can't speak for every bargaining unit, but for ours, it is a company that is basically on retainer to provide that particular service. It was mutually agreed upon.
And so each individual district.
Yeah, their arbitrators, whatever is
Okay.
defined in their collective bargaining agreement.
At the national level, there's AAA, the American Arbitration Association. They have standards, education, training, and qualified arbitrators are available in various fields for parties to select and name them in their collective bargaining agreement, or just say, when we do have to arbitrate, we'll always go to AAA to find somebody qualified. They have a range of choice.
All right, well, I'm at negative 35 seconds. It's an angry red color, so. Anything else?
Thank you.
All right, well,
All right, next up is Nicholas Budimir, and
Norm, can you turn the projector back up?
I guess
Oh, Ricky, can you, camera, where do you want me to stand?
Anywhere is fine.
Anyway, well.
Yeah,
I'll get-
just not behind me.
Parking lot
Just not behind
doesn't-
me.
The parking lot doesn't help. It's so nice to see Bruce. Bruce and I did some singing at the college some years ago with our dear friend Kwame. No, don't point
They
that
have
out
a
to
long
people.
memory, Nick.
Bruce, we're all getting older and prettier.
I just saw Kwame the other day.
He's going to ask.
Hope you did. Is this working? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Norm's going to ask.
He did.
You're just going to work, I'm just going to go. My name's Nicholas Budimir. The title, whenever it shows up there, is America, Homegrown Inequality. And what I want to do tonight is just show in really broad outlines how large-scale changes in the balance of class forces, sort of economic forces, and other class forces, rather than some sort of supposedly irresistible forces of globalization, they changed the dynamics of American inequality and American class. So what we ended up having was a one-sided class war waged by corporate America against Main Street. And all of this one-sided class war, partly against unions, partly against sort of like regular working class people. We're good. Thank you. What it happened, it made our politics meaner, our workers less secure, it degraded our workplace, and it fabulously enriched the already wealthy. So think about some of the things that are going on there. The land of America, where food trucks and free breakfast programs are needed and are being cut. So just a couple of things here. Some of you are very young, especially right in the front row, and you don't remember all of these things. But the rest of us, like Bruce, we lived through all of these. Oh, Bruce is going to be, Cowboy, save your questions to the end.
Oh, I have no question.
We're not doing questions. We're doing questions at the end. I'm in charge here. So some people remember that in the year 2000, I was tending bar in Detroit, the Bush campaign went from a compassionate conservatism to, after 9/11, Bush quickly shifted to being the war president. A president with war on my mind, right? So look at how quickly the political ideology shifts. Not only was Bush the war president, we invaded Afghanistan, gave a huge tax cut. That's going to be a big theme here in 2003. We invaded Iraq under absolutely false pretenses. So everything that the state said, everything that the government said, the president, vice president, secretary of state said, including Colin Powell, lied in front of the United Nations about Iraq and weapons of mass destruction. So some of us who remember that, some of us who do not. Even that, more than 20 years ago, was terribly destructive to the global image of the United States, our worldwide image. We're the nation that lies about war. That's terribly wasting our good name. We don't have to hit everything, but we had the Great Recession, which degraded many people's wealth and housing. That brought in the presidency of Barack Obama, the signature Affordable Care Act was very quickly followed by a very reactionary right-wing pseudo-populist Tea Party, heavily funded by business and the middle class. Occupy Wall Street put inequality, or at least the talk of inequality, on the map. But not long after, right? Not long after, the specter of both Donald Trump and the Bernie Sanders insurgency. So what we're seeing is inequality keeps growing through the United States, and politics either adapts or adopts to that. Skip. Back in 2021, we have the sort of normal Biden presidency, but as you see, that kind of ends in a Democratic Party, however you want to call it, catastrophe or fiasco. So one of the main things, or one of the main themes I want to talk about, is the growth in inequality. So I'm going to put a quote up here. You're going to guess when it's from. And there's a space gone there. There's a space that's missing. So something blank is a second Gilded Age in which many Americans made and spent money abundantly. Yet as the decade ended, too many stretch limousines, too many enormous incomes, and too much high fashion, right, foreshadowed a significant shift of mood. A new plutocracy, some critics were even using the word oligarchy, had created a new target for populist reaction. So what should go there? What period of time? What do you want to guess? Come on, people, guess. Cowboy.
Roaring 20.
Roaring 20s, when both Cowboy and I were alive. What else? Wrong. Julie.
88.
1888 or 1988? 1988. 1990s.
I'd say 2010.
2010. Okay, we got. It was the 1980s. It was the 1980s. So who wrote this? Kevin Phillips, who was actually the father of Nixon's Southern strategy. So if you look at Kevin Phillips' book, The Politics of Rich and Poor, which this is from, published in 1990, it's scathing account of the growth of inequality in the 1980s. So 40 years ago. We've been talking about the growth of inequality for 40 to 50 years. Not just since Bernie Sanders started running, not just since about Occupy Wall Street, but on for 50 some odd years. And rather unabated. Just a kind of a look here, just a snapshot of inequality. Share of aggregate income, the bottom 80% of the population lost income, right? The bottom 80% is, yes, right here, the bottom 80%, sorry, right here, bottom 80% lost income over the 13 years of Obama, Trump, Biden, and now Trump again. The bottom 80% lost 1.1% of income, which was picked up by the top 20%. And you can kind of see the differences. Where these great transfers of income are occurring here. So growth of inequality just over the last 13 to 15 years. But it's even more stark than that. Thinking about when I was born, some of the rest of you, like Bruce, I will have to take much further walk that way. But some of my students that came here, one of them was born here. So just to make this right, so Mr. Budimir was born here. One of the students was born here, and another student was born somewhere right about here. So what has happened here? What has happened here? You are reading this right. We lived in a much more equal society. Bottom 50%, the half of the population. We lived in a much more equal society in the 1960s and 1970s. From the year before I was born, the bottom 50% of the population has lost ground. Lost their share of income, lost their share of national income, while the wealthiest 1%, to say it in Bernie Sanders' phrase, the wealthiest 1% have just about doubled their share of income. So just to drive this home, many community college students or retirees, some employees at the college, some employees at Muskegon or local public schools are in fact in the bottom 50%.
Oh, could you show that again? The remarkable thing is the green line represents a very small population.
Absolutely.
The red line is 50%.
Of the population. So 50% of our population is just about 195 million people. This is 3 million. So just to put that into some numbers. So 3 million people take home 20% of the income. 50%, 195 million people take home about 12% of the income. Let that sink in. And we've already talked about this. Thank you, President John. I'm also President Budimir, but let's not make a big deal about that. So I can't stress this, and I'm going to read this because it's so important. Can't stress enough how much the decline of organized labor hurts the American worker, the working class, and the middle class. Not only in terms of reduced wages, reduced power, and reduced voice at the bargaining table that John very nicely talked about, not only in less protection from arbitrary orders or dismissal, not only does the decline of organized labor reduce the amount of time off, the vacation time employees get, but in addition, the decline changes people's consciousness, changes how people think and organize. It plants Henry Ford, or maybe I should say Elon Musk, in the brain, makes them feel alone and isolated and hopeless and ineffective. I cannot stress enough how the decline of organized labor, there are motions here, how the decline in organized labor changes politics. If politicians don't have to fear a strong and unified voice backed by people power, they are for sale to the highest corporate bidder. And we have examples of that from local politics. So the question was given to John, where are we? Just about the lowest. This is combined public and private sector in 2024, 9.9%. This is where we were strong in the late 30s and 40s. It's pathetic. It's rather pathetic. And I did want to make a quick comment on things that John was saying. Most of the rights that John and my dear friend Bruce were talking, and our other friends up here, most of these rights that they were talking about, most American workers do not have and do not enjoy. Again, this is not taxing the rich. Very quickly, we have moved, these are the top income brackets, and everybody is sort of converging around this 20 to 30%, 20 to 30% top income rate. Now, what this means is the top incomes are not being taxed. So some people wear little dresses to the Met Gala that say tax the rich, because we are not taxing the rich. And there's a very interesting graph to pair with this. And this is the national debt. So think about this, go back and forth. Taxes on the wealthy go down. Taxes on sort of the poorest seem to be edging up. But here is the national debt. Now think about this again. Every year we are paying $478 billion in interest to hold this debt. Just think about this for a second. That interest on the national debt, that means 16 cents out of every dollar the government spends goes, where does it go? It doesn't disappear. It goes to the creditors of the national debt. Most of the credit, I didn't include this here, most of the creditors are large American, not Chinese, large American banking centers, the 401ks, the mutual funds, BlackRock. It is not going to China. It is going to the so-called bond holders. And these are large institutional and individual investors. So that $478 billion goes to pay the wealthy for writing us checks. basically, giving us loans, right? This is a loan given by what Karl Marx would call the bourgeoisie to fund the American government, which then the American people need to pay back to the so-called bourgeoisie. So keep that in mind. One other point here, the so-called big, beautiful bill, by two different measures, would add either $2.4 trillion over a decade to this, or if they pass the Senate version, it would be $3.3 trillion. And most of the tax cuts, which is basically what this big, beautiful, very, very ugly bill is mostly institutionalizing and making permanent tax cuts to what Bernie Sanders calls millionaires and billionaires. Remember this again. Again, we want to keep this one in mind, the drastic divergence in these two classes of people. So this is bringing us back to why are politics becoming mean? So politics are also becoming mean. I have this phrase, I haven't published it in a book, but if the working class doesn't organize itself, someone else will. So who else is organizing the working class? It's hard to see, but this is First Baptist Church, Dallas, which every Christmas has a big America celebration with Robert Jeffress. And it doesn't show it here, but there were fireworks and American flags. And in, I believe it was 2023 or 2024, we can look this up, the Christmas invocation was given by former President Trump at this church. Our current Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, this is a quote of his, "Our American crusade is not about literal swords, and our fight is not with guns, yet." And his fight is against the communists, the Marxists, the socialists, the secularists, and other people who are undermining and ruining America. So the thing is, without powerful unions, without powerful alternative voices of organization, the working class is organized by this. And if those diverging equality and inequality, that greatly diverging income gap between the 1% and the 50%, and nobody is organizing those people, something else, some very mean, very weird politics comes in here. Hyper-individualism, hyper-consumerism, right? We're being fed Uncrustables. Don't get me started on Uncrustables. Frozen bread. People, frozen bread with peanut butter and jam, and you buy it? That was what your mother did. Anyway, let me say one more thing here. It's very, very important. Nobody else in the world cuts crusts off of bread for their children. Nobody else. This is some sort of spoiled American.
I hate crust.
Yeah. See, this is what's happening. This is what's happening. This is why America is suffering. Cutting the crusts off of bread. So we also offer a very emotional and therapeutic religion that offers a salve for the soul, but also a salve for our monetary soul. Other problems here. Possibly liberals have overframed inequality as merely or only a racial problem. I could talk about that more later. We have the hustle and grind culture, the rise and grind culture. We could talk forever about, why are the crypto bros and the gold bugs and the gold granddads, hey, let me sell you some gold, right? Why are they, in this age of inequality, why are they here? They're here to cement inequality into gold. all of these weird alt-right personalities that are offering nothing but nationalism, chauvinism, and racism. So,
Can you go back to that one? What is the hustle culture? I don't
so hustle culture is, well, I got to just move and get this job here, and I've got my social influencer channel here, and something is going to pay off here, and I rent out an apartment here, and I have my own taco truck over here, and I never sleep because all I drink are those, what are those? Monster, thank you, Monster energy drinks, and I'm going to retire by 35 because of hustle culture.
Yeah, the idea that you have to monetize your hobbies. So like you like doing a thing and you should make money off of the thing you like doing.
Monetize everything. Monetize. I ate an apple. Monetize it. So what do we do? Thank you. I know I'm over. What do? We gotta organize. We need to organize unions on a much higher level. Who knows what they'll look like? Which means labor needs to really fight and put its resources into organizing. There needs to be penalties, not rewards, for union busters like Amazon and Starbucks. We need much more robust worker protections. Social Security needs to be saved, not gutted by Doge. We need to tax the top incomes significantly more than we are. We need to be redistributing income through various means. And as French economist Thomas Piketty suggested, everybody at age 25 who does not already inherit should inherit $125,000. Wow. Thank you.
Any questions?
You want to just let Chris go, and then we?
Well, I just wanted to make a couple of comments, if you don't mind. Regarding taxes, in the year I was born, we had a radical socialist president, Dwight Eisenhower, and the top marginal tax rate, income tax rate, personal income tax rate, was 90% on income over $300,000 in that year.
And you sort of saw that on that.
Which in today's money would be $2.5 million. Now that's you're paying 90% tax on anything over $2.5 million, right? Corporate taxes have also come down significantly. And back then we had millionaires, and our country, there were a lot of other factors that went into it, but our country was pretty flush, and we were building roads, we had plenty of money for public services, and with Reagan, he came in and started telling people that, the government is taking your money and giving it to people who don't deserve it, and that's been the narrative for the last 40-something years. Taxes are the price we pay for living in a civilized society. And so,
who said that, Norm?
It's escaping me at this point. Thank you.
I don't know either. I know I.
Yeah, but I mean it's true though, right? It's basically a big GoFundMe for everybody, right? And we all do better when we all do better. So, Anyway, I just wanted to throw those two things in there.
I have a question.
Sure.
Other countries have a very different tax rate. We give the excuse that high tax rate for the wealthy was because of World War II, and we need, and you see after 1945 it begins to go down. But other countries have very high tax rate, isn't that right?
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah, and
Norway.
But because they have, these other countries have much more robust, liberal, left-wing, sort of labor-type parties, and we do not have that. We have a sort of a liberal party that has both billionaires and labor unions and poor blacks in it. It's called the Democratic Party, which has gone very neoliberal and has also bought into the tax cuts make economic growth. So, and the Democratic Party has been sort of on that gravy train since the 80s.
But my
unfortunately.
question is, what are some examples of other countries' tax rates and the benefits they get?
Sweden, Finland, Denmark, I couldn't tell you the number, twice as high, in the 60s to 70%, and they've come down too, but they've come down nowhere near the way that I kind of showed you how.
And the millionaires don't all move out.
No, but they have fewer. They have less. They have less overall inequality, and they have less, way less, significantly less homelessness and near poverty than we do. Our poor are much worse off than the European poor, the Australian poor, the Japanese poor, or the Taiwanese poor.
Yeah, the bottom line is that these other countries with higher tax rates, which are generally considered to be sort of democratic socialist countries, they get, the citizens get more value for their money from their taxes. I mean, they all have national health care, right? That's
And
not
it is.
cheap, but
It's cheaper than what we have.
Exactly,
Norm.
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
much
Yeah,
cheaper
no,
than what
it's
we have.
way more efficient, yeah. And they
And
also.
family leave after
Yeah, I mean,
childbirth.
they get a higher degree of benefit from their tax dollars than we do. So anyway, I was handed a card that says that the quote about taxes being the price we pay for living in a socialized, or in a civilized society is from Oliver Wendell Holmes. So there we go. Thank you for that.
I have a couple of questions for you. So what is the difference between the really wealthy right now? Because, you know, we had people that gave money. I mean, they did libraries and the wealthy don't seem to have any compassion or empathy for the poor anymore. I don't understand where they're coming from because not even a tax write-off or whatever, but, you know, because I don't understand. The other question is, how many local and state unions are there in Michigan that are registered?
What was that last one, Julie?
How many unions are in Michigan?
We're like, what are we at? We're like, overall in public-private, we're like at 14 to 16%, whereas that national number is 9%. So we're in the top 8, I suppose. You know, it varies by state. South Carolina has less than 2%. So, right, you know, you can't find a union member even when you go to the union hall. But, you know, New York, New Jersey, Michigan, Illinois, Hawaii, California are higher, but we're not high. We're less than, all of these states are way less than 20%. Every single province in Canada has more unions than the highest unionized state in the US. It's kind of funny.
To answer the first part of your question, Julie, there's a big difference between a millionaire or a billionaire and a corporation. Because what you were referencing earlier was the Gilded Age, like the Rockefellers and the Carnegies and you know, these people that were super duper wealthy and they wanted to leave a legacy, but they're individuals with a conscience and a need to live on beyond their lifespan. Whereas a corporation doesn't have a conscience. It can't have a conscience because it has shareholders that it answers to. So it's going to do nefarious things because it's a system, not a person. Except the Supreme Court says it is a person.
Right. Well,
Which
and
is
also,
a big problem.
just a real quick comment. Getting back to something you had said earlier regarding the Janus decision, which ties in with Citizens United, where the Supreme Court said that money is speech,
Right.
which I fundamentally disagree with. Money is money. Speech is speech. Money will buy you the ability to spread your speech more widely, so you get a bigger amplifier, and that's where a big problem comes in now. You know, because we've got, you know, these just the money has just taken over.
And they also decided that corporations have basic human rights.
Right. Yeah, and you know,
Just like
so
people.
when we have the
Which is
death
ludicrous.
penalty for corporations that
Yeah.
do bad things, then I'll start to believe that they're people.
Yeah. Citizens United could be the end of our democracy eventually.
Yeah.
It's that bad.
Yep. You had a question?
Yeah, first, to add to that, corporations are also immortal, effectively.
Yeah, right.
Immortal individuals who never die and can continue to pass on. Just imagine if you believed in reincarnation and knew who you were going to be, and you could just keep leaving your money to yourself. But when you start with the Gilded Age, Carnegie gave away a lot of money. J.P. Morgan did not really.
Yeah.
Bill Gates is giving away a lot of money. I think Musk and Jeff Bezos, they're not. They're always going to be. I think there's a problem with that. It's psychopathy is what it really comes down to. Is that
Pathological greed.
they simply don't understand that they're deriving their wealth from all of us, and they should be supporting all of us as well, like we are. We're all in this world together.
Biggest welfare recipient in history is Elon Musk. Vast majority of his wealth came from your tax dollars.
All right, any last questions on that topic before we move on? All right.
I have one. Hyper-individualism. Can you explain why that is beneficial to more and more income inequality?
Why individualism
Hyper-
promotes
Like
inequality?
I would say, so the more and more the classes pull apart, and especially the more and more the wealthy get wealthier, in our minds and in our sort of ideology, we kind of say, oh, I've got here, how did I get here? And if you look up the Forbes 400, we say, you look up all these people that self-made, self-made, self-made. And, Ricky, you said something great about this cultural thing. I know all of you who were doing the cha-cha in the 70s, this wasn't the thing, but there was no such thing as marketing yourself and like the smoothie you just made. It's a fundamentally different thing when you're, I know this is not a cell phone, when you're selfieing and then posting it and getting 5 cents or 5,000 or whatever, there's a new individual in the world, and this new individual is tied into their success, their wealth, their image, their youth, the how many brands of soda pop they can endorse, and this is unheard of in the 50s through the 70s. So.
And I also think that there's sort of a lack of understanding regarding the social contract anymore. That we're all sort of in this together. That the hyper-individualism negates that. No, that's what I'm saying.
We're not in this.
No,
we're in the Upton Sinclair's jungle.
Yeah.
We're in.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's that lack of understanding that there's a social contract, and it's all about me. So what can I get? So
Well, I would just comment that that's a huge contrast between us and a culture like the Chinese, where the individual is always subjugated to the group, and the union asks for individuals to be somewhat subjugated to the group, which goes against our culture's fundamental assumption.
well, also that's thousands of years old, and it's a very homogeneous culture. Our culture's less than 400 years old and very diverse and heterogeneous. So we don't have that sort of shared collective sense of purpose that some of these more ancient cultures have. So anyway. All right. Thank you very much.
Ready?
Yes.
I'm going to stand there if that's
All right.
okay.
Sure.
Thanks. Hi there, my name is Chris Vanderstelt, and I am the Executive Director for Age Well Services. A little bit about me, I am from the Muskegon community, born and raised, went away to Western, didn't think I'd come back, and did, but really glad that I did. My life's work has been in the nonprofit sector. Prior to working for Age Well Services, I actually worked for many child welfare organizations and in youth development. And currently I serve as the Vice President of the Family Financial Credit Union Board, and I am the President of the Michigan Irish Music Festival. So I have these kind of varied experiences at nonprofit, in which, whether a 501c3 organization, a 501c4, with my commitment and involvement with the JCs as well as Rotary, we know that the sector has a lot to offer, right? So going back to the history of lessons of what we've been given this just thus far, and we think about the sector of the nonprofit in general in the IRS code of the 501, we know that our organization is a 501c3, meaning that we are of charitable intent. But there are many other different types of corporations underneath that tax code that do not have that same mission. So sometimes when it comes to federal advocacy, it can be a tricky widget for us because we get lumped in with the hospital systems. You did know that Blue Cross Blue Shield is also a nonprofit corporation, didn't you? You knew that. Okay. It shocks me every time because every time they take my money, I wonder. It's true, right? So we have all these different inequities and differences, but around 50 years ago, when we were created, AgeWell's mission was really defined through the Older Americans Act, which was passed in 1973, especially to bring meals and services to homebound seniors first and foremost, knowing that as individuals age in place, they need other resources in order to stay home as long as possible. Students in the front, who is our fastest growing generation right now?
I'm from the baby boomers, so it's not me.
Yes, it is you, my dear. It is exactly you.
Right, it is.
Absolutely. The boomers are the fastest growing generation and we've known about this, right? We've known for years this was happening. It's not a surprise. It's why Social Security was created. It's why Medicare was created, to take care of older adults as they grow into adulthood. But what we know is obviously as inflation continues to rise and the cost of healthcare, I could do an entire speech about the economics of aging. And if you look at what is happening right now in our economy, it literally has everything to do with our aging population. People say, where are the workers? They're lazy. They're living off of, the public service. No, they're not. They don't exist. There are not as many workers to replace the individuals who are retiring at a rapid rate, right? So here we have this interesting dichotomy at AgeWell Services where it's our mission to keep individuals 60 and older in their homes for as long as we possibly can. Why do we want to do that?
Because it costs a lot of money to house them elsewhere.
So much money, right? And dignity, right? Who wants to die in a nursing home? Anyone? No, not me. So we say that approximately 90% of individuals want to die at home and age with dignity, but 90% of us do not. So very interesting, right? As we age in place and we change and we are still growing, we are still learning, we are still have opportunities to give back, we have this opportunity to redefine our own age, and that's what AgeWell is all about. Because if you know my friend Tim Lypan, and you may, I use him all the time. He used to be the executive director of the American Red Cross. If you ever went to Muskegon Summer Celebration, he was the guy with the microphone, Mr. Personality. Tim Lypan would still tell you that he is 27 years old. I'm here to tell you he's not 27 years old, but in his head, he definitely thinks he's 27 years old. And I honor that because honestly, we are all at a different age and stage in our life, and you can look at one person who is aging, and you can look at another, and you can put them next to each other, and they will look and have complete different life scenarios, health conditions, all different sorts of things that make them unique and different, right? So at AgeWell Services, we are really passionate about food access being our number one. Where we started is providing opportunities for individuals to socialize if they're not homebound. So we call those our lunch and activity centers. And we work in 3 counties, Oceana, Muskegon, and Ottawa County, all up and down the lakeshore, to provide Meals on Wheels 1,400 meals a day go out our door at Tanglewood Park, which is the old grocery store, a D&W grocery store in Norton Shores. That's where our main commissary is. And we have a huge program that also is there. You may have also caught in the news that we have recently closed our senior center. I'm going to talk about that in a minute because this is the unintended consequence of federal funding cuts and what is happening at the DOGE level. In addition to that, we have very robust programs that help get individuals to their medical transportation our medical transportation program provides rides for individuals 150% below the poverty rate, over the age of 60, and they need in a medical condition. Our volunteers drive our fleet of vehicles, which is by MDOT, purchased by MDOT funding. And with that funding, we're able to take individuals to about 60% of those appointments are dialysis appointments, another 20% are cancer treatment, and then the other one is primary care, all sprinkles in there. So very high demand for that program. Our Safe Seniors program started about 6 years ago. It really blossomed out of a committee of individuals who really wanted to make sure that individuals were not being exploited and financially exploited as well as abused and neglected. And so Safe Seniors is a collaborative task force with law enforcement, prosecution, adult protective services, mental health practitioners, gerontology, as well as medical doctors to really determine the ability for individuals to make their own decision making, but also protect them from harm and hopefully get restitution back if they have money stolen from them, which I could give a whole nother presentation about. So, first of all, where we began our fiscal year back in September, we had significant budget deficits. We had been promised some ARPA funding that then was taken back from us. We also have had significant impacts in inflation that I'm going to talk about. We had significant cuts that we needed to make to AgeWell in general. And during that time, we did a lot. We stopped all non-essential services. We've worked really hard to try to make sure that we're cleaning our own toilets. We don't hire a cleaning person to come and do them. Literally stripped back everything we could to try to ensure that services to individuals were not cut or stopped. But since then, so when we moved to Tanglewood Park 18 years ago with our Area Agency on Aging, the entire reason why we did that is to prepare our capacity to be prepared for this moment. When we have individuals who are in such high demand for our meal programs and our volunteer programs, and it's very difficult to keep up, but we have worked so hard the last almost 16, 17 years now, building that capacity in terms of our infrastructure, our systems, everything, getting ready and prepared for this moment. We knew that based on that there were a lot of different opportunities to educate our elected officials on exactly the impacts that inflation as well as the potential cuts and continuing resolutions in the budget have made. So here's some things that I really want to highlight at the beginning. COVID was a pandemic that changed us forever. It changed our organization forever, how we operate. We have had a lot of highs and lows thanks to stimulus funding over the pandemic period that helped to keep us afloat. It helped us to supplement some of the funding that we were losing out on. In addition to that, you all have been to the grocery store, right? Go out to eat. You know how expensive food is, right? Our raw food costs are about $1 million per year. So just get that in your head about what even a 4% or 5% looks like of that. But not only that, we've obviously had direct labor workforce shortages, which have also caused us to increase our rates. This year we didn't talk quite a bit about the ESTA law that passed in the state of Michigan, which also made it mandatory for organizations and companies to provide sick time leave support for individuals. We also had 2 minimum wage hikes in the state of Michigan this year alone. One that was planned for and we knew about it, but another one that came through lame duck session. So we've had all these unexpected added costs. The other interesting part is you might want to know is that because Michigan is a no-fault state, it makes our the fleet transportation on our senior transportation vehicles astronomical, about $10,000 per month to insure that fleet. So everywhere we have turned around, there has been inflation everywhere. Through that, charitable giving across the nation has been down. I'm very proud to say that at AgeWell we have a very high amount of giving and a very high retention rate of our donors that actually surpasses national averages. And that's a lot of really hard work in communication and those relationships. But what we're watching and what we're concerned about is even before President Trump was taken into office, we were already concerned about population formulas. So to explain to you, the federal government, when they grant out funding, there are two different types. There is population formula and there is competitive. When you go for a grant, when you compete, it means you are competing for that grant across the nation with all of the people. But with formula funds based on the population of the state, they're able to create a formulary that then gets passed to the state, and then they make those distributions based on the formulas within those specific communities. That is specifically how Older Americans Act is allocated. But what has happened is in the state of Michigan, what has happened to our population?
Gotten older?
It's gotten older.
It's decreased.
It has decreased significantly. So as you can then imagine, what happens to our population formulas? They decrease because we're losing population. At the same time, in the state of Michigan, we are ranked the 13th highest country in the United States for the number of boomers that live in our state. What are the two things that are going to happen almost immediately that you can anticipate?
Higher health care, fewer people in the workforce because those boomers are retired, even from singing in public with Nick.
Then you have to go to chamber choir, that's what I heard. Right, you have those dichotomies, but there's even more than that too.
That 13th highest, is that the number or the percent?
We are number 13 out of 50. Does that make sense?
But based on our number of boomers or our percent of boomers in the population?
It's the number of individuals in the population of 60 and older.
You're not gonna have places to live. I mean, doctors are, yeah. So, I mean, yeah.
There's all these weird things,
Yeah.
right? Now you see the ripple effect it's having on housing, right? I said I could give a whole presentation just about how boomers are affecting our economy, right? And the unintended consequence of keeping people in their home as long as possible is what? There's not inventory on the market for families to enter homes that are affordable because individuals are hanging on to their homes longer because that's what we told them to do, right? So it's kind of creating this interesting dichotomy, you're right. So we have these like weird nuances that keep happening. In addition to that, we are also going to have a significant amount of less people to care for boomers in the coming years. Think about that. So not only is there going to be that direct care workforce shortage, but this has been talked about in the senior sector for about 8 years now. Number one, because those individuals who are taking care of seniors are also, it's one of the hardest jobs ever. They are not certified, and it is very inexpensive, $14, $15 an hour to definitely do one of the hardest jobs ever. So that is a big issue. Coming up, the things that we are really concerned about is the big beautiful bill. The BBB has lots of cuts to Medicaid in it. Something to understand is that if you are a Medicare participant, there may be a day in which you need to have Medicaid in order to go into a long-term care facility because Medicare does not pay for long-term care facilities. So you need to have additional insurance and savings in order to pay, what would you guess how much money a month a nursing home costs? On the low end, what do you think the low end is?
$4,000.
6,000.
$6,000 is the low end. High end is about 15, depending on the level of care. Having just lost a mother-in-law to Alzheimer's too that we placed in care, I learned that you should not wait too long, because also medical facilities are so overpacked and understaffed that if you go beyond a certain level and require more hands-on help and attention, they will deny you. And then you will have a very difficult time being placed. So don't wait until it's too late. Big Beautiful Bill is going to create a ripple effect for healthcare across our community. I was sitting next to the CEO of our hospital system, Gary Allure. He told me that 70% of the business at the hospital is Medicaid patients. 70%. So what happens if we erode that? All of us who are not part of that 70% and we have privatized insurance, it's going to increase rapidly, but also it's going to decimate our healthcare system, because who's going to pay the doctors anymore?
I was just going to make a comment about assisted living, or with my dad, we actually had to hire somebody to come into the assisted living center for an additional expense.
Yes.
So, I mean, you can't do that, but it's very costly.
Yes, we had extra palliative care from hospice to help with that, as well as, thank goodness, I mean, Dave unfortunately had to retire because she was in such a state where she couldn't be left 24 hours, but he would go there to fill that role as well. And when you have busy people, like, look, sandwich generation right here. I am raising parents and I am raising children at the same time, and at any point could probably be a grandparent, which is really crazy to think about those multiple generations and how that can affect how you're able to care for people, right? We've talked about, and for a long time in our community, United Way has talked about the ALICE population, the asset limited, income constrained population of individuals who are one paycheck away from an emergency, one check away from not being able to get the car fixed to make it to work. That class has especially relied on services to help keep their children in daycare while they work. When they're sick, they have to leave to take their kid to the doctor, presumably, right? It is the same exact way as we care for our elders. They have lots of doctor's appointments. They require a lot of help when it comes to getting where they need to go. If I have to take off work every single day to go do that, or even twice per week, that could potentially limit my employment abilities, right? And put me on a whole different radar. So we have, sure.
Can I ask a question?
You sure can.
You're going so fast
I
and
am.
there's so much. You said 70% about something.
Yes.
And I lost what it was.
70% of the patients at our hospital here in Muskegon are Medicaid patients. So 70% of that hospital is paid for by you. So we also have this continuing resolution, right, in our budget that still has not been reconciled. So we're all kind of sitting on pins and needles, waiting to see what's going to happen next. So we have that in addition to the Big Beautiful Bill. But then on top of that, we have a new budget year that's coming up, which quite honestly, friends, has me more scared about the Big Beautiful Bill and the continuing resolution. Because if they do not pass a budget, what happens to the federal government? It shuts down. What does that mean for nonprofit organizations and those providing services to individuals? There is no money, right? It means that I get reimbursed for every service that I do based on a cost per unit. I can literally tell you that our meal costs $11.46 right now because of inflation. I can literally tell you exactly the complete package and what that looks like, right? But if I don't have the money coming up the pipeline to reimburse me for those expenses, that puts my organization in a world of hurt. Coming off of COVID, in which we have used our resources as wisely as we possibly could, but we have not gone into debt. But I also don't have a big nest egg anymore because we have used some of that nest egg on the losses that we have taken the last couple of years. Because let me tell you how fun it is to budget in this environment. It is a wild guessing game. So let's just look at inflation numbers here really quick. Here is what has troubled us at Age Well Services. So add all of those up, right? Just 8.2% alone in 2022. I mean, if I'm working on a $1 million budget, that is a significant amount of money that I no longer have in terms of revenue. So the federal funding updates, you can see Age Well Services is approximately, I would say about 50% funded by the federal and state government through these different pots of funding through the federal government level. You see there's a little additional blue there because that local allocation is from the Muskegon County Senior Millage, on which we are very proud partners in that millage, but the majority of it comes from those resources. The ones to watch are the Older Americans Act. Older Americans Act, like I said, was adopted in 1973, has not been reauthorized as an act in many years. That is also part of why it continues to not grow in terms of the amount of money that is needed. So it's really remained quite flat funding, which, as I've showed you in this day and age, goes a lot less places, right? So we're watching that like a hawk. Medicaid, we actually have Medicaid pay for some rides and some meals for what are Medicaid waiver enrollees. So those are also what are called dually eligible. People who receive Medicaid and Medicare are also available to other services. Medicare Advantage plans are things to be watching for, because if they're going to start taking food from the mouths out of babies and 10 cents a meal and SNAP, they're coming for all of it. Community Development Block Grant funding they have tried to zero this out in on Trump's first administration, saying that we need to stop investing in programs that don't work. And that is kind of a bugaboo with me. And that then created us to militarize the Meals on Wheels system. And we thought that if we did that and we buried it under defense, then maybe it would have a chance for survival. So then the other thing is, I want to just highlight a little bit of the work that we've been doing along with our other partners here in Muskegon area, and really trying to bring local food into our food system by partnering with local farmers and makers to make it happen. And in the last year and a half, we have received funding from the USDA on the Local Food Purchasing Agreement, LFPA. And we have been able to work with 16 different farmers infusing over 50,000 pounds of locally produced food, meats, and dairies into our food chain system, both through our Meals on Wheels program, as well as to citizens in Muskegon Heights. The citizens of Muskegon Heights live in food deserts in which they cannot access fresh fruits and vegetables, and they have recently lost their food pantries, making access even more difficult. So we have partnered with community to try our best to get as much of that food out into the community as we possibly can.
What's with the food pantries?
We're seeing a rash in food pantries folding. And the reason being is because many of them are housed in church and congregations that are aging in place, and they're many times led by those volunteers. So obviously, if our volunteer capacity as a church reduces, we're not able to keep up with that demand. So we're seeing more and more of that, but we're also seeing substantial demand. Yeah, Cowboy, you got a question?
At my church, we're seeing a little bit of that, but we're also bringing in younger students, younger people to now, in the last couple of semesters. From MCC, we've been bringing in students to help supplement the Saturday morning breakfast and the mobile food pantry. Because, as you said, our regular volunteers are in their 70s and 80s. These two youngins here beside me was some of the first ones that came from the college to help out at the breakfast.
It doesn't happen without the use of volunteers, does it? It's so important.
In the fall, he was fall and winter semesters. Mr. Budimir had in the fall it was extra credit, and in the winter we had a actual class project.
That's awesome.
For helping at the breakfast.
That's awesome. We need more volunteers, and that's exactly what you're going to see everywhere you go, right? Meals on Wheels specifically. So here's my shameless plug of where we need help, because that's what was asked of me. We can't have enough volunteer drivers. We use a spoke and wheel model where we bring the van up to the White Lake community, and we have volunteers meet in one location, and then they go from there. So, and then the van will go up to Shelby, and it will do the same. It will drop in Oceana County, and it goes from there. So volunteers don't have to come all the way into Tanglewood Park. You actually meet at Shaw here in White Lake area, and that's our meeting point. So we always need volunteers, but especially during the winter months when the snowbirds go away. So we always need that. We have 43 different meal routes, so it is a substantial amount. That program is also going through some significant changes in the way that it's going to be conveying its food so that we can reduce our expenses because we cannot keep up with inflation. The Senior Medical Transportation Program, you heard me say, is very important to this community in Muskegon County. I want you to help me spread the word. We just, here's some good news for you. We did receive money from the Michigan Department of Transportation, a grant for 3 years to help us actually increase rides. So we'll literally increase and double the amount of rides that we are going to be able to give. And we would really like to especially target the White Lake community to let people know that we can get them to their doctor's appointments if they need to get there. We have a wait list of over 60 individuals for this program, so they will be excited to get up and running. Meals on Wheels wait list began in February, and we already have 248 people on the wait list. Last year, we were on a wait list for about 6 months. We try to manage it with attrition at that point because we only have so much money and so many meals that we can provide. But it's significant. I think it topped out at about 670 individuals. So the demand is there. It will continue to be there until the population dips again.
Is that 670 across the 3 counties?
Yeah, correct. That is correct. Then we also have this beautiful facility, our beautiful senior center at Tanglewood Park, which was so much about normalizing aging and bringing people together. What happened was with the uncertainty of our budget, this program has always operated in the red. Everybody has one. We call them our loss leaders on our books. But we've always felt it's very important to our mission to keep people moving and connected and doing art. And all of those wheels of wellness that we think about are still so important. So we had our fitness instructor Francine said, I want to retire. And our wellness manager was getting married and moving, and our lease was up at Tanglewood Park, so it felt like kind of kismet that we needed to bring this program and retool it, and so it's coming back into community. So the activities and the classes have not ended, but we have changed our programming significantly to bend with that. And we will continue to see more cuts. We have a lot of advocacy happening at the national level. Meals on Wheels America is a phenomenal organization, and they actually just had Kennedy there for a visit about a week ago, which seemed quite promising, but one never knows, right? So we're really looking at how we can collaborate stronger with community, where we have the opportunity to hold classes and spaces. We don't want to duplicate efforts. So for example, there are some great senior things that happen here in White Lake. We're happy to support them and not duplicate them. But these are ways that you can most certainly help. Obviously, money is always a thing that we always need. It just always is as a nonprofit organization. But But your advocacy, especially at this time, is even more important to say, hey, I know that Meals on Wheels is important, and as are these other things. Please help lift the table. So many times people just don't know what they don't see. And we are definitely that service that you don't know you need it until you know that you need it. But these are all different ways that you can stay connected with us. And we sincerely need more volunteers both for the senior transportation program, in which you drive our vehicles, and Meals on Wheels, in which you drive your own vehicle. So that is, in essence, where we are at today. Tomorrow, I have no idea. Literally, I was telling Sue that these last 5 months, I literally have no idea what I'm doing. But I know I'm supposed to be prepared. I just don't know for what.
Can you go back one? I was copying down the email addresses.
Absolutely.
I have a question for you. What about like using virtual? It sounds weird, but virtual things, because the hospitals are using them with virtual nurses. And you're thinking more outside of the box, because I used to be a director of a senior place, and so things have changed. I mean, I visited other countries and looked at read a lot of books about aging populations, and so there's so many things now that they're doing in different countries that maybe we need to start thinking about. One of them I thought was really interesting was because housing is very expensive, that actually young people can go in and a couple or maybe they buy a house, but they're also having to take care of older people. And then there's a community kitchen. And the people probably are not to the point where they have to have a nurse that has to be on site all the time. But anyhow, and then eventually they own the house. So it's an incentive for, they're more community oriented. There's a lot of outside of the box things that, I got out of that. I'm retired now, but I was like, well, okay, there should be things like the virtual visitation on a channel that you could say, hey, how you doing today? Especially if you're not getting the meals. Always, because that's a big cut, I've heard, that you're not.
No one has been cut from meals, but we are not onboarding any new individuals at this time. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we have not reduced service,
Yeah.
but we're definitely losing our capacity, without a doubt, to bring more people on. There are so many great things and examples that are out there. Aging is definitely a thing. We all do it, right? We don't want to talk about it. It happens. And there are some really great things that are out there. And staying connected is the biggest thing, right? So many of us who maybe had not been isolated before COVID, we had kind of a taste for what that's like, right? And that's not good. That gave my heart a lot of hope that perhaps as society we would have those bigger picture conversations. But we're back at square one, it feels like. So, questions? Yes, thank you.
I have a question about the statewide organization of the AAA's, Area Agency on Aging.
Yes.
The putting of these 3 counties together, how recent is that?
Oh, forever. No, they've been that way forever.
Oh, they have, okay.
Yeah, it's actually part of the Older Americans Act, in which it codified the AAA system and stated that states would divide them into regions. The states are empowered to divide those regions.
We're going to turn into a pumpkin in about 10 minutes. So we have time for maybe one last very quick question if anyone has one for any of our presenters.
I had a comment, if I could, Norm, from Chris's. So from what Chris was talking about, there's so much passion of people across the country in many, many states for doing care work, youth care, elder care, and it kind of struck me, the types of people who do this kind of work all across the country, including in places like Louisiana and Kansas. How many of these folks have voted to put the party of slashing care budgets in power? You know that many of them did. That's a question.
Thank you. All right, and thanks to Chris and Nicholas and John tonight. Let's give them another applause. Sharing your knowledge and expertise with us, we really appreciate it. Yes, go ahead, really quickly.
I'm going to do a quick, I'm Tamara, I'm one of the members of the planning committee for Common Ground. We have these cards on the table. If you can please take one when you leave. This is for the Livability Lab, which is a Muskegon County project. It covers a lot of the themes that we talked about last night. Some of our planning committee members have been on how to increase volunteerism campaign and how to get our aging populations out in outdoor activities and green spaces. So what they need is more input from out county of the city of Muskegon. So this is really important that you take this and give your feedback so that they know where there's a need, that we have gaps that need to be filled. So there's your little plug for that. And the one other thing I'll say is that I'm sure there are things that you all heard tonight that you'll go away and be thinking a little differently. We encourage you to start a conversation or a few conversations with your friends and family about something you heard tonight so that they can learn from what you heard. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Just again, if you're interested in the email address for Common Grounds, the email address is commongroundwhitelake@gmail.com, commongroundwhitelake@gmail.com. And just to finish up, I'd like to share a poem that was written. And so it's Finding Common Ground is the title. It seems so simple, finding common ground to spark a conversation, to connect with someone. As kids on a playground, we just start talking, and before long, we're laughing, playing side by side. But as adults, we hesitate. We watch from a distance, unsure if we should engage. Fear and mistrust hold us back, and in these times, it feels even harder to reach out. Conversation used to come with unspoken rules, no talk of politics, religion, or money. Maybe that's why people still found ways to connect when why they felt less divided. Now those topics are everywhere, heavy with history, charged with emotion, and they seem to drive us further apart. Yet finding common ground is possible. It starts with really listening, seeking out ways to connect without pointing fingers, without judgment or blame. Practice the art of conversation. Practice listening even when you disagree. And in those moments of listening, you just might rediscover what draws us together. So thank you, Julie, for that. All right, thank you everybody for being here tonight. Really appreciate your time. You could have been doing anything else tonight, but you chose to be here with us. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Hope you're getting something from it. And start those conversations with the people in the community.